Hey guys, it's Brian. Today we're going to take the base mesh that we saved from last time that eventually became Samus to make a Rosalina sculpt. We'll be referencing this rather sporty piece of artwork of Rosalina that I found on Pinterest by Sarukai Wolf. Starting off on her clothes, we'll select the verts from the base mesh to make her hoodie and track pants and duplicate then separate them. Adding a shrink wrap modifier to the clothes and having the base mesh as the target will allow us to move around and straighten the openings on the hoodie in sculpt mode with the elastic deform brush. After deleting a few of the loops to shorten the pants in the hoodie, we'll add a solidify modifier to give them some thickness. While holding control with the inflate brush, we can shrink her boobs a bit, and with the elastic brush, bring out the cloth between the boobs. If there's any clipping, you might have to deflate the chest on the base mesh as well. Next, we're adding a few loops to the top of the hoodie and duplicating them. This will eventually become the hood. Using proportional editing with X mirroring turned on, move the verts around until you find the shape that you need for the hood. I was having a bit of trouble getting the shape that I wanted, so I brought the hood into sculpt mode, remeshed it, and sculpted the hood to where I needed it. Then used QuadRemesher to get the quad count back down. Next up, we're adding loops to the wrist and the waist of the hoodie to support the edge and scale the elastic parts up. Same thing with her pants. Add loops, slide them to the edge you want to be sharper, then scale the faces you want to become the elastic parts. Now we're marking seams so we can UV unwrap the model. Seams for the clothes are easy enough, just select the edges closest to where the clothes seams would actually be. For the head, we don't want the seams in places that would be noticeable, so we have a seam in the mouth, behind the ears, and around the shirt line, up the back of the head, and down the hairline connecting to the ears. We'll also put seams around the torso, under the hoodie, and on her waist under the pants. To make the shoes, we'll duplicate the foot and scale it a bit. Duplicate the bottom and give it some thickness with the solidify modifier to make the soles. Duplicate the top and remove a few loops, then add some thickness to make the laces. Duplicate the faces that run along the side of the shoe and then solidify again. Use the same technique to make the toe of the shoe, same for the sock. Add a mirror modifier and the other shoe is done. Let's work on the head next. Unhide the rig and go into pose mode. We'll close her eyes with the controls and get them as close as we can. Later on we'll tighten everything up in sculpt mode. Move her mouth into a pose that's pretty close to our reference. Scale and rotate some of the controls to get the features closer to where you want them. Add a sphere and place it on her head. Sculpt it to where it matches where her hairline should be. Next we'll add a curve and make it into a triangular shape. This will be our reference that will give our hair strands their bevel. Add a path and choose the triangle as the bevel reference, scale it down with Alt S and move it into position on her head. You can scale the tip to a sharp point by selecting the invert and pressing Alt S then 0. If you need to change the twist, you can press Ctrl T while having the vert you want to be twisted selected. Keep adding paths to make all the parts of the hair, making new reference curves if you need a different type of bevel shape. Continue this process till it looks like she has a bunch of bananas on her head. Remember to use the mirror modifiers on parts that you can. That'll save you some time from having to do it twice. To make some eyebrows, select some verts from the base mesh and duplicate and separate them. Shape the brow to your liking and solidify. Select the hair pieces and parent them to the head bone in the rig so they move with the mesh when posing. Speaking of posing, it's time to pose. Take your time and try to get her into the position that best represents the reference. While you're posing, you can make tweaks to the model's overall shape by scaling on some of the controller handles to make her head smaller and her calves bigger. I almost forgot the ponytail. Using the same methods as before, create your bevel reference and start adding paths to make up the strands of the ponytail. Now we can further tweak the hands so that it's interacting with the hair as if she's holding it up while trying to tie it. You can make the drawstrings for her hoodie and track pants using curves the same way that we did with her hair. Now it's time to start sculpting. Since we did a lot of the major changes to the face in pose mode, most of the sculpting is touching up things like closing her eyes the rest of the way shut and changing the lips and creating creases. Starting off with the base mesh really saved a lot of time and work put into this. You can see how I made the base mesh that I'm using to make Rosalina right now in the previous sculpt video that I did where I made Samus from Metroid. If you don't want to make your own, you can always download the fully retopologized and rigged base mesh from my Gumroad for free. Link is in the description. Continuing on with the sculpting, add a multi-res modifier to the hoodie and tweak the shape of the bottom to make it look like it's sitting on her more naturally. Then start sculpting in all the folds using draw sharp to pull out ridges and holding control to push in crevices with a bit of smoothing to ease the transitions. I went back into the base mesh and selected a couple of loops and scaled them to make the sleeves more baggy, then back into sculpt mode to add a few more creases so it looks less uniform. On her stomach, I over exaggerated her abs to get the shape, then used the smooth brush to soften them back down. For her pants, I used draw sharp and pinch to define the crease where her leg is moving forward, add detail to the knees, and tighten up that booty. Following Dicko's tutorial on blocking out colors the cheap and dirty way, we'll make the skin shader. First off, in the world settings, change the color to an off-white with a strength of 1. Go ahead and add a new material to the base mesh and open the material editor. Add an ambient occlusion node and hook the color to a color ramp. Now you can change the colors and add handles for more colors until you get the effect that you want. The handles on the right will be your highlights and the handles on the left will be your shadows, and anything in between will be the gradient transition. Adding a geometry node and hooking the pointedness into a crunched color ramp, then into the factor of a mix RGB allows you to control the color of your sharp edges like the nose and the lips. For the clothes and hair, I duplicated the same material and changed the colors in the color ramp. Now, these mats are fine as they are, but if you want to, you can bake them into a texture. Just add an image texture and click New, name it, size it, but don't connect the node to anything. Under the Scene tab with Cycles as your render engine, click Bake. After it's finished baking, you can plug your texture in and use it instead. To paint the decals like the NASA logo and the stars, add an image texture node and click New. Choose a size and make sure that Alpha is checked. Next, hook the color into the bottom socket of a Mix RGB node and the Alpha into the Factor socket. Plug the texture we baked or the tail end of the material that we created earlier into the Color 1 socket of the mix. Then plug the mix into the principled BDSF. If you've got everything right, when you go into texture paint mode and choose the alpha texture we just created, you should be able to paint on it without disturbing the base texture. So now we create a new brush, import this NASA logo that I got off of Google, and paint it into the shirt. I didn't realize it at the time, but you can move the decal around with right click, shift right click resizes the decal, and control right click rotates it. For the stripes on her pants, I used the same node setup, created a new alpha texture, but instead of using decals, I used the brush to draw 2 lines with X mirroring turned on. Same thing for her face. I colored in her lips, added some red to her cheeks and nose, and gave her a bit of color on her eyelids. Now with all that, we're pretty much finished. While I'm working on the backdrop and lighting for the final renders, you should go check out @Surakai_Wolf on Twitter. His cool Rosalina fan art inspired this sculpt. You can also find me on Twitter @Nisaki, where I post the whips that I'm currently working on. Or if you'd rather only see final renders, I started an Instagram. You can find me on there under Bran Sculpts. That's enough plugging. Here is the final render and turnarounds. If you'd like to explore the blend file, the unposed model of Rosalina is up on my Gumroad for free. You can check the description and go and download it. I don't know what happened. The pose data is gone, so she's actually in a T pose. You can pose her any way that you want, but the actual pose in this render is not in the file, unfortunately. But anyways, thanks for watching this video and joining me as I try to learn how to model and sculpt things in Blender. I'm really having a lot of fun. Over the summer, my day job has really pushed out a lot of hours on me, and I've been switched over to night shift, so I don't have a lot of time for sculpting, but I try to get a sculpt out and a video done around once every 2 weeks. But if you're interested in seeing my future growth in Blender, consider subscribing or even clicking the notification bell if you don't want to miss any of the sculpts. Also, if there's a character you would like to see fan art of or some art you'd like to see in 3D, leave it in the comments and I will take a look at it. Again, thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon. See you soon. I will see you soon. Bye.